The morning sky over Seoul changed forever when the first alien ship appeared like a giant crystal mountain floating in the clouds. Captain Hyun-woo Kim was drinking his coffee on the space station. When the alarm started screaming, he dropped his cup and ran to the command center where dozens of screens showed something impossible. Massive ships were coming down from space, but these were not like the metal rockets humans built. These looked like they were made from pure diamond and gold. They sparkled in the sunlight and seemed to bend light around them, making rainbow patterns in the sky. Each ship was bigger than the biggest city on Earth, and they moved without making any sound at all. People on the streets stopped walking and pointed up at the sky. Children started crying, and adults pulled out their phones to record what they were seeing. The ships were so beautiful and terrifying at the same time that nobody knew if they should run away or just stand there and watch. Then, the voice came. It spoke in every language at the same time, somehow reaching into every radio, every television, every phone on the planet. The voice was deep and musical, like someone singing in a cathedral. But it was also cold and distant like winter. Wind, we are the Vextai children of the first stars, the voice said. Your small world has caught our attention. We have watched you struggle and fight like animals for thousands of years. Now we have come to bring you peace and order. You will serve us, and we will show you wonders beyond your simple minds. Captain Hyun-woo tried to contact Earth Military Command, but all the communication lines were jammed. The aliens were somehow controlling every signal on the planet. The other officers on the space station looked scared and confused. They had trained for many situations, but nobody had prepared them for gods arriving from space, down on Earth. The alien ships moved to positions above every major city. One massive vessel hovered over New York, another over London, Paris, Tokyo, and dozens of other places. The ships cast huge shadows that turned day into twilight. People gathered in the streets looking up at their new masters. The aliens did not wait long to show their power. One of their ships pointed a beam of pure light at an asteroid that was floating near Mars. The asteroid began to change shape right before everyone's eyes. It twisted and bent like clay in invisible hands. Within minutes, the ugly rock became a perfect crystal sphere that glowed with its own light. Another alien ship touched down in the Sahara Desert, and within hours the sand turned into a garden full of plants that nobody had ever seen before. Trees made of silver grew next to flowers that seemed to be made of living light. Water flowed uphill in streams that formed perfect geometric patterns. The world leaders were the first to give up. President of the United States went on television with tears in his eyes and said that humanity must accept these new gods. The Prime Minister of England made a speech about how the aliens would teach humans to become better. The leaders of China, Russia, and India all said the same things. They were scared and amazed and completely defeated, but not everyone was ready to kneel down. Deep underground in a secret military base, Admiral Ji-hai Park was reading reports and making plans. She had been waiting for this day for 30 years, ever since the first strange signals had been detected from deep space. The Terran Defense Corps was a secret organization that most governments did not even know existed. Admiral Park had gray hair and scars on her hands from years of training. She looked at the young officers around her and saw fear in their eyes. But she also saw something else. She saw anger and determination. The same look that humans had when they faced hungry wolves or enemy armies. These aliens think we are just animals, she said to her staff. They think we will roll over and show our bellies like scared dogs, but they do not know humans very well. They do not know what we do when someone tries to make us slaves. The alien ships began sending down smaller vessels that looked like flying jewels. These carried the Vextai themselves, beings of pure energy that wore bodies made of crystal and light. They were tall and graceful and moved like they were dancing, even when they were just walking. They spoke in voices that sounded like music, and their eyes glowed with colors that had no names. The first Vextai to land walked into the United Nations building in New York without opening any doors. They simply passed through the walls like they were made of air. When they appeared in the main assembly hall, every human there fell to their knees without being told to. The aliens radiated power that made humans feel small and weak and unimportant. "We are your new gods," the lead, Vextai, announced. "You will build monuments to honor us. You will mine the deep places of your world for materials we need. You will learn to serve, and in return, we will allow you to live in the shadow of our greatness." Some humans tried to resist. A group of soldiers in Washington, D.C. opened fire on the aliens with their best weapons. The bullets passed right through the Vextai like they were shooting at ghosts. The alien leader looked at the soldiers with something like pity and waved his hand. The weapons turned to dust in their hands, but the soldiers themselves were not hurt. "We do not wish to destroy you," the alien said. "You are like children playing with dangerous toys. We will teach you better ways." But what the Vextai did not understand was that humans had been playing with dangerous toys for millions of years. Every war, every fight, every struggle for survival had taught humans something important. Never give up, never stop learning. Never accept defeat in hidden bases around the world. Military officers like Colonel Minho Lee were already working on plans the aliens had. Impressive technology. But they had made one big mistake. They had announced themselves like conquerors in old stories. They had given humans time to think and plan and prepare. Dr. Sujin Han was studying the energy readings from the alien ships in her underground laboratory. She had been working on theoretical physics for 20 years, trying to understand how space and time worked. Her computers were analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the alien technology. "The aliens can bend matter and energy," she told her team, "but everything follows rules. Even their power has limits. We just need to figure out what those limits are." Meanwhile, Captain Taemin Park was overseeing construction in the asteroid belt far from Earth where the aliens were not watching. Human engineers were working around the clock building something the aliens would not expect. They were building ships designed not to explore or carry cargo, but to fight. The Vextai spent their first week on Earth, setting up floating cities above the major population centers. These cities were beautiful beyond description, with spires that reached into the clouds and bridges made of solid light. Humans were ordered to come and work in these cities mining rare metals from the ocean floor and building statues to honor their new masters. Many humans obeyed because they were scared or amazed or both, but others remembered what their ancestors had done when faced with tyrants and invaders. They began to organize in secret, passing messages and making plans. They remembered that humans had never been good at bowing down to anyone. The aliens noticed some resistance, but they were not worried. They had conquered dozens of worlds and hundreds of species. They knew that all primitive races went through a period of adjustment before accepting their place in the cosmic order humans would learn, just like all the others had learned. But the Vextai had never met a species quite like humanity. They had never faced beings who treated gods like just another enemy to study and understand and ultimately defeat. They were about to learn why humans had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that would have destroyed any other species. The stage was set for a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The rebellion began at exactly midnight on a cold December night, when Lieutenant Jae-sung Kim led his team through the maintenance tunnels beneath the floating city above Seoul. The tunnels were filled with pipes and cables that carried power and water to the alien installations above, and the humans moved through them like ghosts. Jae-sung had spent weeks memorizing every turn, every junction, every access point in the underground maze. His team carried weapons that looked like simple tools, but were actually precisely engineered devices designed to disrupt Vexthai energy systems. The electromagnetic pulse generators were disguised as repair equipment, and the kinetic penetrators looked like ordinary construction supplies above. The Vexthai slept in their meditation chambers following the same rigid schedule they had maintained for thousands of years. The aliens never varied their routines because they had no concept of enemies who might study and exploit predictable patterns. Their perfection had become their greatest weakness. Captain Insu Park coordinated the operation from his hidden command center, watching as 12 teams moved into position simultaneously around the globe. Each team had spent months infiltrating the maintenance systems beneath the floating cities, and now they were ready to strike at the heart of alien power. The first attack hit the power distribution center beneath New York exactly as planned. So Young Kim had identified this facility. During her infiltration missions, and her intelligence proved accurate. The electromagnetic pulse device sent invisible waves of energy through the quantum field generators that powered the city above. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The elegant crystal spires that had been glowing with their own inner light suddenly went dark. Emergency lighting systems flickered on, casting strange shadows across the alien architecture. The Vexthai had never experienced power failures before, and their automated systems had no protocols for dealing with this situation. Similar attacks struck floating cities above London, Paris, Tokyo, and 8 other major population centers around the world. The humans had coordinated their strikes across multiple time zones, ensuring that the aliens could not respond to one attack before the next one began. The Vexthai response was swift, but exactly what the humans had predicted. High above the city's alien patrol craft began sweeping the area with energy beams, searching for the source of the attacks. But the human teams had already melted back into civilian populations, leaving no trace of their presence. Commander Changmin Kim watched the alien search patterns from his hidden observation post and smiled grimly. The Vexthai were using their standard security protocols designed for dealing with primitive uprisings on other conquered worlds, but those protocols assumed that rebels would fight like conventional armies with obvious bases and clear command structures. The aliens deployed their enforcement drones, massive mechanical constructs equipped with particle beam weapons that could vaporize buildings. The drones were impressive displays of technological power, but they were programmed to fight enemies who would stand and face them in open combat. What they found instead were empty streets and abandoned buildings. The humans had evacuated the target areas hours before the attacks began, using civilian evacuation plans that had been practiced for months. The drones fired their devastating weapons at shadows, while the real rebels struck from completely different locations. Major Hyejin Lim led the second wave of attacks against communication relay stations that connected the floating cities to the main alien fleet in orbit. Her teams used simple kinetic weapons that fired steel rods at high velocity. These primitive projectiles passed right through energy shields that were designed to stop plasma beams and particle weapons. The aliens had never faced enemies who fought with such crude tools. Their defensive systems were sophisticated enough to stop the most advanced energy weapons, but a simple steel rod moving fast enough could punch through their crystalline armor like it was made of glass. Dr. Youngsu Kim's Psychological Warfare Division began broadcasting on frequencies that the aliens monitored. The messages were carefully crafted to exploit Vexthai psychology, which valued perfection and absolute control. The broadcasts suggested that the aliens might not be as superior as they believed. How can gods be surprised by mere animals? One transmission asked, "How can perfect beings lose control of their own cities? Are you truly divine, or are you just another species that has forgotten how to fight?" These psychological attacks were more effective than kinetic weapons because they struck at the core of Vexthai identity. The aliens had built their entire civilization on the belief that they were the ultimate expression of cosmic evolution, superior to all other life forms, and destined to rule the galaxy. But now primitive humans were making them look foolish in front of their own people. The floating cities that were supposed to demonstrate divine power had been shut down by creatures the aliens considered barely above animals. The perfect order of HFY society was being disrupted by chaos they could not understand or control. The third wave of attacks came at dawn when Captain Taemin Park Special Forces units struck at HFY ground installations. The aliens had established several research facilities on Earth where they studied human biology and psychology. These facilities were heavily defended, but the defenders expected attacks from advanced weapons. Instead, they faced humans armed with chemical explosives, crossbows, and even simple clubs. The primitive weapons were invisible to alien sensors, and the fighting techniques were completely outside HFY experience. The elegant alien warriors found themselves in brutal close combat situations they had never trained for. The most shocking moment came when Sergeant Hyun-ki Kim team cornered a group of HFY researchers in their laboratory. The aliens tried to use their energy projection abilities to defend themselves, but the humans had studied these powers for months and knew exactly how to disrupt them. A sudden bright light followed by a loud noise could break alien concentration for just long enough to make them vulnerable to physical attack. The HFY discovered that their godlike powers required focus and calm conditions that were impossible to maintain when facing determined human soldiers. The first day of rebellion lasted exactly 18 hours, and when it was over, the aliens faced a situation they had never encountered before. 12 of their most important installations had been damaged or destroyed. Their enforcement systems had been made to look ineffective, and their reputation for invincibility had been shattered, but the real psychological impact was even greater. The HFY had spent the day chasing shadows and shooting at ghosts, while human rebels struck from directions they never expected, using methods they could not predict. The perfect alien order had been replaced by chaos that followed no rules. They understood. High Admiral Velthar called an emergency meeting of the HFY leadership. The alien commanders gathered in their flagship, orbiting Earth trying to understand what had gone wrong. Their technology remained superior. Their firepower was overwhelming, and they still controlled the planet. Yet somehow a species they considered primitive had made them look foolish. The humans had not won any major battles, but they had done something far more dangerous. They had shown that the gods could be surprised, outmaneuvered, and made to look vulnerable. "This cannot continue," Velthar declared. "We will increase security, double our patrols, and crush this rebellion before it spreads. We are still gods, and these animals will remember their place." But deep in his crystalline heart, the High Admiral felt something he had never experienced before. The cold touch of doubt. The humans were not behaving like any other species the HFY had conquered, and their methods of warfare were completely outside alien understanding. The rebellion had begun, and already the aliens were learning that ruling humanity would be far more difficult than they had ever imagined. The false gods were about to discover what every tyrant in human history had eventually learned, that humans could be conquered, but they could never truly be tamed. 6 weeks after the first rebellion, Admiral Woo Jin Lee stood on the bridge of the TDS Indomitable, watching as his crew made final preparations for their emergence from the asteroid belt. The massive warship had been hidden among the rocks and ice for 2 years, waiting for this moment when humanity would reveal its true strength to the galaxy. The Indomitable was unlike anything the HFY had seen in their thousands of years of conquest, where alien ships were graceful works of art that showcased technological superiority. The human vessel was a machine built purely for war. Every surface bristled with weapons. Every angle was designed for maximum tactical advantage. Lieutenant Commander Kyung-hee Park monitored the tactical displays as reports came in from the rebel networks on Earth. The HFY had brought reinforcements from across their empire. Massive dreadnought ships that could crack planets and command vessels that coordinated fleets across multiple star systems. The aliens were preparing to end the human rebellion with overwhelming force. They had grown tired of chasing shadows and fighting guerrilla fighters who refused to stand and face them in honorable combat. High Admiral Velthar had declared that humanity would be taught a lesson that would echo across the galaxy. But the Vextai still did not understand their enemy. They assumed that humans, like every other species they had conquered, would eventually mass their forces for a final, desperate battle. That was how wars were supposed to end, with clear battle lines and decisive engagements between opposing fleets. Captain So-Ra Kim had spent her entire career studying alien combat doctrines, and she knew exactly how the Vextai would fight. They would form elegant battle formations that maximized their firepower while minimizing their exposure to enemy weapons. They would demonstrate their technological superiority through displays of overwhelming force. The human strategy was completely different. The Indomitable was designed not to meet alien ships in formal battle, but to hunt them like a predator stalking prey. Every system on the ship could be modified during combat. Every weapon could be reconfigured for different targets, and every crew member had been trained to adapt to changing circumstances as the ship powered up its engines and began moving toward Earth. Admiral Lee reviewed the intelligence reports one final time. The Vextai fleet consisted of 47 major warships, including 12 dreadnoughts that could destroy entire continents with their main weapons. Against this overwhelming force, humanity was sending a single ship. But numbers had never been the deciding factor in human conflicts. The species that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that destroyed civilizations had learned long ago that victory went not to the strongest, but to the most adaptable. The battle began when Vextai long-range sensors detected the approaching human vessel. The alien response was immediate and devastating. Energy beams that could vaporize mountains lanced out across space, followed by gravity weapons that could crush matter into neutron density and temporal fields that aged targets to dust in seconds. The display of power was magnificent. Exactly the kind of divine wrath that had brought hundreds of species to their knees across the galaxy. The Vextai expected the primitive human ship to be destroyed instantly, demonstrating, once and for all, the futility of resisting superior beings. Instead, the Indomitable danced Captain So-Ra Kim had studied every recorded Vextai battle for 20 years, and she knew their patterns like a hunter knows the habits of dangerous prey. The alien ships fired their weapons in predictable sequences designed to inspire awe and terror rather than achieve maximum tactical effectiveness. The human ship moved like something alive, twisting and rolling through space in patterns that seemed random, but were actually precisely calculated to avoid the areas where alien weapons would be most concentrated. The Indomitable used minimal energy for maximum effect, never trying to match alien firepower, but always staying one step ahead of their targeting systems. When the human ship finally returned fire, the aliens received another shock. The Indomitable weapons were not designed to impress or intimidate. They were designed to kill as efficiently as possible. Kinetic rail guns fired streams of depleted uranium projectiles at relativistic speeds, while plasma torpedoes tracked their targets through dimensions the Vextai had not known existed. The first alien ship to die was a cruiser that had approached too close, expecting to finish off the human vessel with its particle beams. Instead, it found itself facing weapons that struck faster than its defensive systems could respond. The elegant crystalline hull cracked and shattered as kinetic projectiles punched through armor that had been considered invulnerable. High Admiral Velthar could not believe what he was seeing from his command ship. The human vessel was not fighting like any enemy the Vextai had ever faced. It moved unpredictably, struck without warning, and seemed to learn from every exchange, becoming more dangerous with each passing moment. The indomitable tactical systems were constantly analyzing alien responses and adjusting human strategies in real time. Every shot that missed provided data about alien defensive capabilities. Every successful hit revealed weaknesses that could be exploited. Lieutenant Commander Park coordinated the weapon systems like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. What terrified the aliens most was how quickly the human ship adapted to their tactics. When the Vextai tried to surround the vessel, it suddenly accelerated beyond their ability to track. When they attempted to predict its movements, it changed course in ways that seemed to violate physics itself. Dr. Young Park had equipped the Indomitable with experimental drive systems that combined human engineering with captured alien technology. The ship could manipulate gravity and space-time, but in rough, improvised ways that alien sensors could not predict or counter. The battle continued for 6 hours as the human ship systematically dismantled the Vextai formation. One by one, the alien vessels fell victim to weapons and tactics they had never encountered before. The humans fought not like gods demonstrating their power, but like apex predators, eliminating threats to their survival. Captain Sung-Ho Kim led the most audacious assault of the battle when the Indomitable actually docked with a Vextai command ship and deployed boarding parties. The aliens had never imagined that enemies would dare to fight them hand-to-hand in the corridors of their own vessels. The human soldiers moved through the alien ship like they were clearing an enemy bunker using tactics that had been developed in 1,000 urban warfare situations. Their kinetic weapons were useless against alien energy shields at long range, but devastatingly effective in close-quarters combat. For the first time in their existence, individual Vextai warriors faced human soldiers in personal combat. The aliens discovered that their energy projection abilities were less useful when fighting enemies who could get close enough to touch them. Their elegant combat forms were designed for ceremonial duels, not desperate life or death struggles. The turning point came when boarding teams reached the alien command centers and began capturing Vextai officers. The prisoners were not harmed, but they were studied, analyzed, and interrogated, using methods that revealed crucial information about alien psychology and tactics. By the end of the day, 7 Vextai ships had been destroyed. 12 more had been severely damaged, and 3 command vessels had been boarded and captured. The remaining alien ships retreated to higher orbit, trying to regroup and understand what had happened to their invincible fleet. The humans had not won the war, but they had accomplished something far more important. They had shown the galaxy that the Vextai could be beaten, that gods could bleed, and that humanity was not just another primitive species to be conquered. The real battle was just beginning. 3 months had passed since the Vextai arrived, and the world had changed in ways nobody could have imagined. The alien floating cities cast permanent shadows over human settlements, and the sound of mining equipment echoed from the ocean floors. Where humans worked like slaves to gather materials their new masters demanded. But deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that appeared on no government maps, Colonel Min-Ho Lee was working with the best minds humanity had ever produced. The Terran Defense Corps had been preparing for this day for 50 years, ever since the first mysterious signals from deep space had been detected by radio telescopes. The underground complex stretched for miles in every direction, with laboratories, workshops, and training facilities carved directly into solid rock. Thousands of scientists, engineers, and military personnel worked in shifts around the clock, all focused on a single goal: understanding their alien occupiers and finding ways to fight back. Dr. Sujin Han stood before a massive holographic display, showing the energy signatures from Vextai technology. She had been studying physics since she was 12 years old, and now at 45, she was leading humanity's most important research project. Her team had been analyzing every scan, every reading, every piece of data they could gather about the aliens. The Vextai technology is impressive, she told the gathered scientists, but it follows patterns. Everything they do is based on quantum field manipulation at the subatomic level. They can reshape matter because they control the forces that hold atoms together, but that also means they have predictable limitations. Her colleague, Dr. Young-Soo Kim, had made another crucial discovery while studying alien behavior patterns. The Vextai have never fought a real war. He explained to the military commanders they expand their empire through intimidation and displays of power. When species see their abilities, they surrender. Immediately, the aliens have no experience with prolonged resistance or guerrilla warfare. This revelation changed everything. The humans realized they were not facing experienced conquerors, but rather powerful beings who had never learned to fight against determined opposition. The Vextai were like pampered nobles who had never faced real hardship or serious challenges to their authority. Engineer Dong-Hyun Choi was working on practical applications of this knowledge in the materials science division. His team had developed new composite armor using rare earth elements, combined in ways that could absorb and redirect energy attacks. The armor looked primitive compared to alien technology, but it was specifically designed to counter Vextai weapons. Meanwhile, intelligence officer So-Young Kim had accomplished something many thought impossible. She had infiltrated one of the floating cities by disguising herself as a maintenance worker. The aliens were so confident in their superiority that they barely noticed human servants moving through their installations. What she discovered there shocked even the experienced military commanders. The Vextai lived in a society of perfect order and harmony. They had eliminated conflict from their culture thousands of years ago through technological control and genetic modification. They literally could not understand concepts like deception, ambush tactics, or fighting dirty. The aliens sleep for 6 hours every day at exactly the same time. So-Young reported to Admiral Ji-Hai Park. They follow rigid schedules and their guard rotations never vary. They have security systems that can detect energy weapons and advanced technology, but they never thought to scan for simple chemical, explosives, or kinetic weapons. Captain Taemin Park was overseeing humanity's greatest secret project in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Hidden construction facilities had been building ships for 3 years, using resources mined from asteroids and powered by fusion reactors that the aliens had not detected. These were not exploration vessels or cargo haulers. These were warships designed specifically to fight the Vextai. The ships looked brutal and functional with angular armor, plating and weapons systems that bristled from every surface. They were built by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare. The human ships used different principles than alien technology, where Vextai vessels were. Elegant and efficient, the human warships were redundant and adaptable. Every system had backup systems, and every weapon could be modified or upgraded during combat. The ships looked like what they were, tools built by apex predators, Dr. Yoon Young. Park had made perhaps the most important discovery of all while analyzing captured alien equipment. The Vextai built their technology to last forever, she explained. Their weapons and defenses are masterpieces of engineering that never break down, never need repairs, and never change. But this perfection was also a weakness. Human technology was different. It was rough, improvised, and constantly evolving. Human engineers built things that could be fixed with spare parts, modified with available materials, and upgraded as new threats appeared. The resistance movement was growing stronger every day. Major Hae-Jin Lim coordinated civilian networks across the globe using communication methods the aliens could not monitor. Old-fashioned radio systems, hidden fiber optic cables, and even message systems based on changes in traffic patterns or graffiti on walls. Humans were teaching each other skills their grandparents had known: how to move silently through forests, how to hide weapons in everyday objects, how to recognize surveillance equipment and avoid detection. The aliens had given humanity the gift of a common enemy, and humans were responding the way they always had by adapting and organizing. Lieutenant Jae-Sung Kim was training Special Forces units in combat techniques specifically designed for fighting energy-based life forms. The aliens could pass through solid matter, but they still had to concentrate to do it. A surprise attack with kinetic weapons could disrupt their focus and make them vulnerable. The training was brutal and dangerous, but the volunteers kept coming. Men and women who had never been soldiers before learned to move like shadows and strike like lightning. They studied alien behavior patterns until they could predict Vex-Thai reactions, and they practiced with weapons that looked primitive but were precisely engineered to exploit alien weaknesses. Captain Insu Park had established a network of safe houses and supply caches throughout the major cities. His teams moved weapons, ammunition, and equipment through systems the aliens never monitored. Sewage tunnels, subway maintenance areas, abandoned buildings, and even the spaces between walls in office buildings, the Vex-Thai continued to rule through displays of power and technological superiority. But they were starting to notice small problems. Equipment would malfunction for no apparent reason. Supply shipments would be delayed. Mining operations would experience technical difficulties that slowed production. The aliens attributed these issues to human incompetence and increased their surveillance, but they were looking for the wrong things. Their sensors could detect advanced weapons and energy signatures, but they could not identify humans who had learned to fight using methods older than civilization itself. As winter approached, the resistance was almost ready. Admiral HFY Park reviewed the final plans with her senior staff. The humans had spent months studying their enemies, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for a fight that would determine whether humanity remained free or accepted permanent slavery. The Vex-Thai still believed they were gods ruling over primitive animals, but they were about to discover what. Humans had always known that the most dangerous predator was not the one with the biggest claws or the strongest armor, but the one that never stopped learning, never stopped adapting, and never gave up. No matter how impossible the odds appeared, the real war was about to begin, and the aliens had no idea what was coming for them. The space around Earth had become a graveyard of shattered crystal and twisted metal. As the battle entered its second day, High Admiral Velthar stared at the tactical displays in his command chamber, unable to comprehend how his invincible fleet was being systematically destroyed by a single primitive warship. The human vessel moved through the Vex-Thai formation like death itself, striking without warning and vanishing before return fire could be coordinated. 7 more alien ships had fallen during the night cycle, their elegant hulls cracked open and bleeding atmosphere into the void. Commander Changmin Kim coordinated ground operations from his hidden bunker as orbital bombardments lit the night sky like artificial lightning. The aliens had expected their space superiority to end the rebellion quickly and permanently, but they discovered that humans fought just as effectively whether they controlled the orbital zone or not. Across-Earth resistance cells launched coordinated attacks on every Vex-Thai installation simultaneously using intelligence that had been gathered over months of careful observation. The floating cities that had seemed so magnificent and untouchable became targets for human ingenuity and determination. Captain Taemin Park led an assault team through the sewers beneath the Alien Administrative Center in Berlin. His soldiers carried weapons that looked primitive compared to Vex-Thai energy cannons, but were specifically designed to exploit weaknesses. Human scientists had identified an alien technology. The breakthrough came when Dr. Yoon Young Park research team made a discovery that changed everything. The Vex-Thai technology, for all its power and elegance, was built on a fundamental philosophical flaw that made it predictable and ultimately vulnerable. The aliens believed in perfection. She explained to the military commanders during an emergency briefing, "Their weapons and defensive systems are masterpieces of engineering that never fail, never break down, and never need to be modified. But this perfection is also their greatest weakness." Human technology was different. It was rough, improvised, and constantly evolving, where Vex-Thai equipment was designed to work flawlessly for thousands of years. Human systems were built to be modified, upgraded, and adapted during actual combat situations. The indomitable crew had been making improvements to their weapons and defensive systems, even during the battle, turning each engagement into a learning experience that made them more dangerous. Lieutenant Commander Kyung-hee Park coordinated modifications that would have been impossible with alien technology. The most devastating blow came when Captain Sung-ho Kim led a boarding action against the Vextai flagship itself. The aliens had never conceived that enemies would dare to invade the personal vessel of their supreme commander, much less fight them in the sacred spaces where their leadership made decisions, the human assault. Team moved through corridors filled with crystalline beauty and mathematical perfection, but they were not impressed by alien artistry. They were soldiers focused on a mission, and they treated the magnificent alien architecture like just another battlefield to be conquered. High Admiral Velthar faced human invaders for the first time in his long existence. The supreme commander of the Vextai fleet found himself fighting desperate hand-to-hand combat against creatures he had considered barely above animals. His energy projection abilities seemed weak and clumsy against enemies who had trained for exactly this situation. The humans used tactics that were completely outside alien experience. Smoke grenades that disrupted energy-based, vision systems, kinetic weapons that struck faster than thought, and most terrifying of all, they coordinated their attacks with a level of teamwork that the individualistic Vextai could not match. For the first time in their history, the aliens felt something completely foreign to their experience. They felt fear. Not the distant concern of facing a challenging problem, but the immediate animal terror of creatures who suddenly realized they might die. Major Hyejin Lim, Psychological Warfare. Broadcasts had been playing continuously for days, undermining Vextai confidence with carefully crafted messages that exploited their deepest cultural beliefs. The aliens who had always seen themselves as perfect beings destined to rule the galaxy began to doubt their own superiority. How can gods be defeated by mortals? One transmission asked. If you are truly divine, why do you bleed when humans cut you? Why do your perfect ships break when struck by primitive weapons? Are you gods or are you just another species that has forgotten what real war looks like? These attacks on alien psychology were more effective than any physical weapon because they struck at the foundation of Vextai civilization. The aliens had built their entire society on the belief that they were the ultimate expression of cosmic evolution, but now humans were proving them wrong in the most brutal way possible. Not through philosophical arguments or technological demonstrations, but through direct violent confrontation that left alien corpses floating in the vacuum of space. Lieutenant Jae-sung Kim team had captured a Vextai research facility where alien scientists had been studying human biology and psychology. The documents they found revealed something that changed human understanding of their enemies. The Vextai had never fought a real war in their entire history. Their empire had expanded through intimidation and displays of overwhelming technological superiority. When primitive species saw alien power, they surrendered immediately rather than face destruction. This meant that despite their advanced technology and energy-based bodies, the aliens had no actual combat experience. They had weapons that could destroy planets, but they had never learned to fight enemies who refused to be intimidated, who adapted to changing circumstances, and who treated godlike beings like just another problem to solve. Dr. Young-soo Kim made another crucial discovery while analyzing captured alien equipment. The Vextai had eliminated conflict from their own society thousands of years ago through genetic modification and technological control. They literally could not understand concepts like deception, betrayal, or fighting to the death. This explained why alien responses to human tactics were so predictable. The Vextai followed rigid protocols because they had no experience with chaotic, fluid situations where rules changed constantly. They were like chess masters trying to play a game where their opponents kept moving pieces in ways that violated every principle of proper strategy. The tide of battle turned decisively when human engineering teams managed to reverse engineer alien energy weapons and mount them on their own ships. The Indomitable suddenly found itself armed not just with human kinetic weapons, but with captured Vexthi plasma cannons and gravity manipulators. But the human crews operated these weapons in ways their alien designers had never intended. Instead of firing single devastating blasts designed to inspire awe, they used rapid coordinated strikes that overwhelmed enemy defensive systems through sheer volume of fire. Captain Sora, Kim tactical genius, showed most clearly in how she used captured alien technology not as the Vexthi intended, but as tools that could be modified, combined, and employed in unexpected ways. The human approach to warfare had always been about using whatever worked regardless of whether it was elegant or honorable. By the third day of battle, the Vexthi fleet was in full retreat. Half their ships had been destroyed or captured. The other half were damaged and demoralized. The aliens who had arrived at Earth expecting an easy conquest found themselves facing the first real military defeat in their species' history. High Admiral Velthar sent a desperate message to the Vexthi homeworlds, calling for massive reinforcements and new strategies to deal with an enemy unlike any they had ever faced. But deep, in his crystalline heart, he knew that something fundamental had changed. The gods had been proven mortal, and the galaxy would never be the same. The final battle began at dawn on the seventh day, when High Admiral Velthar made his last desperate gambit to save Vexthi honor and prove that his species truly deserved to rule the galaxy. The alien commander activated his flagship ultimate weapon, a device that could theoretically destroy entire solar systems and remake them according to divine will. The weapon had never been used in actual combat, because no enemy had ever pushed the Vexthi to such extremes. It drew power directly from the quantum foam that underlies all reality and could unravel the fundamental forces that hold matter together. But as the massive device charged its energy, Admiral Woojin Lee was ready with humanity. Final surprise hidden facilities throughout. The solar system activated gravity manipulators that had been built using captured alien technology but improved with human engineering principles. Instead of trying to match the Vexthi ultimate weapon with equal firepower, the humans did something the aliens never expected. They turned the weapon against itself. Admiral Jihai Park had coordinated the construction of these devices over many months. Preparing for exactly this moment, human engineers had studied Vexthi technology until they understood it better than its creators did. They knew that alien systems, while powerful, were also rigid and predictable. The gravity manipulators created spatial distortions that redirected the alien ultimate weapon energy back toward the Vexthi fleet. The irony was perfect and devastating. The aliens' most powerful creation became the instrument of their own defeat, Colonel Hyun Ki. Kim led the final assault team onto the alien flagship as explosions rocked the massive vessel from bow to stern. The ship corridors were filled with emergency lighting and the sound of crystal structures cracking under stress that they had never been designed to handle. The human soldiers moved through the dying ship with grim efficiency. They had trained for this moment for years, learning to fight in zero gravity, to navigate alien architecture, and to face energy-based life forms in close combat. Their weapons were simple kinetic devices, but they were wielded by warriors who had never learned to surrender. They found High Admiral Velthar in his command chamber, a being of pure energy wrapped in living light that still flickered with divine radiance even in defeat. The alien leader looked at his human captors with eyes that held the accumulated wisdom of thousands of years and the bitter knowledge of ultimate failure. How he whispered his voice like wind through broken glass. How is this possible? We are children of the first stars. We have mastered forces that shape galaxies. We are God's captain. Haewon Park stepped forward, her armor scorched by energy weapons and her face marked by months of constant warfare. She had lost friends, family members, and comrades in the fight for human freedom, but she had never lost her determination to see. Humanity remained free. That was your mistake, she replied, looking directly into the alien's glowing eyes. You became gods, distant, perfect, unchanging. We remained human, adaptable, stubborn, and absolutely unwilling to kneel to anyone no matter how powerful they claimed to be. The truth was spreading throughout the Vextai Empire as news of the defeat reached their homeworlds. For the first time in their history, the aliens faced a crisis they could not solve with superior technology or overwhelming displays of power. They had encountered a species that fought not to prove themselves worthy, but to remain free captain. Taemin Park coordinated the capture of the remaining alien vessels as human boarding parties secured ship after ship. The Vextai crews surrendered without resistance, their will to fight broken by the impossible reality of their defeat. Many of them seemed genuinely confused, unable to understand how gods could lose to mortals. Dr. Sujin Han began studying captured Vextai, leaders trying to understand the psychology of a species that had believed itself divine. The interviews revealed beings who had lived for thousands of years without ever facing real adversity. Their empire had grown through intimidation rather than conquest, and they had no experience with determined resistance. The aliens had eliminated war from their society so completely that they could not adapt to fighting enemies who used tactics outside their understanding. They had weapons that could crack planets, but they had no idea how to fight opponents who hid in sewers, struck from shadows, and treated gods like just another enemy to overcome. Lieutenant Commander Kyung-hee Park transmitted the surrender terms to Vextai homeworlds across the galaxy. The message was simple and direct. The war was over. Humanity had won. The aliens would withdraw from Earth and never return. The age of Vextai expansion had ended forever. But the real victory was not military, it was philosophical. The Vextai had spent millions of years believing they were the ultimate expression of life in the universe, destined to bring order and perfection to primitive species across the galaxy. Humanity had proven them wrong, not through superior technology or greater power, but through something the aliens could never understand: the human refusal to accept defeat, to adapt to any situation, and to treat every impossible challenge as simply the next problem that needed solving. Dr. Young-Soo Kim Psychological analysis of the defeated aliens revealed the depth of their confusion. They could not comprehend how beings they considered primitive animals had developed strategies and technologies that surpassed their own divine works. The humans had done what no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had faced gods and won not by becoming gods themselves, but by remaining thoroughly and completely human as the last Vextai ships departed Earth orbit. Captain Sora Kim stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the alien fleet disappear into hyperspace. The ships that had once seemed like vessels of divine power now looked broken and defeated, fleeing from enemies they still could not fully understand. The galaxy had changed. Forever, the news of humanity's victory spread to every inhabited world, showing other species that the Vextai were not gods, but simply another race that had forgotten how to fight, how to adapt, and how to survive in a universe that showed no mercy. To the weak or complacent, Admiral Woo-Jin Lee addressed the human population in a broadcast that reached every surviving settlement on Earth. The message was simple. The war was over. Earth was free. The species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless wars had faced their greatest challenge and emerged victorious. But the real lesson was deeper than military victory. Humanity had learned that there were no gods in the universe, only species that had forgotten the harsh truths of survival. The humans had never forgotten these lessons. They had been shaped by millions of years of struggle and competition that had forged them into the most adaptable warriors the galaxy had ever seen. The Vextai had thought they were gods, ruling over primitive subjects. But they had discovered too late that humanity had already met the only gods that mattered. The ancient teachers of evolution survival and the unbreakable human spirit that refused to bow to anyone or anything in the universe. In the end, the false gods learned what every tyrant in human history had eventually discovered. There is no force more dangerous than a species that treats every impossible challenge as merely another problem to solve, that refuses to surrender no matter how hopeless the situation appears, and that grows stronger under pressure rather than breaking beneath it. The age of alien gods was over. The age of human freedom had begun.